And I think I'm live. It's been Murphy started to strike about 10 minutes ago, but we will get on. Hey, Arnie. And I'm going to go through today some issues, or not issues, but some things you can look at if you're thinking of doing remote, where remote is maybe a week or two long, or a month or 6 months. And how do you make a stable platform? Now, I did part of this presentation already in the QSO Today Hamfest. And I'll share my screen where you can see where to find it. So in the FlexRadio channel on YouTube, you can, hi Travis, you can see where to go. And there's a playlist. We have this thing called playlists, and we want to look at the QSO Today live presentations, and they're all here. Okay, well, we don't want Steve barking, but and in here, which will start to play, you can see that this is the one. I'm still getting organized, so now that I'm late, I'm sort of rattled, but I hate being late. I go through some of the hardware you need, and we actually talk about things like this setup here, which is the some of the hardware I use to turn things on and off or whatever. And even this gets adjusted week by week, because this week we found something that's really good for 220 volt switching on amplifiers. So that got posted in the community. But this is the part I'm not going to talk about today. So you can learn about that in the presentation on the QSO Today presentation called FlexRadio Remote by me. And I hope that helps you out. So let's go forward with what I'm going to talk about today. And of course, a minute before I wanted to start, a friend of mine calls me on my ham radio hotline, and I just gotta go, hung up on him. Heck, he might even be watching now. So let me just increase my screen size a bit. And so this is how my ham shack's set up. This is the way I do it. Doesn't mean the way that you have to do it, but this is a setup that works really well for me. It's reasonably easy to set up. It's very reliable, and it also allows you to do a fair bit of debugging if you have a problem while you're away. And the problem we get a lot of support phone calls. I'm 1,000 miles away, and my radio disappeared. It's not online. And so that really inhibits the ability to do any remote diagnosis. So let's go through two parts of that. And the left side of the arrow here, we've got a radio and we've got a computer or a laptop or whatever, but it's a Windows PC. And this is going to be the heart of this setup. This Windows PC is going to allow us to do a lot of things while we're away. And don't get all panicked about leaving a PC going 7x24. We do it all the time. You may not do it all the time, but in the business world, it happens all the time. Hey, Mike. And on this PC, we're going to do a bunch of things. At the basic level, we're going to use this in case we have to connect to the computer remotely to do some diagnostics. Maybe we need to get into our firewall or our router, this part here. Maybe we want to check the IP address of the radio. And if we have this PC here, it allows us to see a lot of stuff going on in the background. Now, if you're asking why not use a VPN, go ahead. And that's certainly a solution. It's a little scary for some people, so I'm not going to suggest it at this time. It's certainly a tool you can add later as you build your confidence. And hi, Stu, type of thing. So I'm trying to keep this for the Joe Ham type of guy that doesn't understand networking or has no education in networking. And don't take this the wrong way, but you're an appliance user, and that's okay, where you just plug in a cable and get things to work. And that's good. No problem at all. There's a lot of ways that we're going to connect to this computer. So you're going to build a Windows, and I'm going to recommend Windows 10. Spend the extra $100, if that. And it's going to probably put a UPS on it. And you're going to put a UPS in a bunch of stuff, but we sort of discussed that in this talk, so I'm not going to go over that in depth. You're going to make sure that computer always starts. So if the power fails, it always starts. And you're going to find that it's not going to be your big problem once you get it up and running. In fact, it's going to be your big savior. And I've said this before. I started remote operating back about 2004, 2005. And there was a whole year there when I decided I don't need a remote PC. I'm going to do everything with remote communications ports and everything, and it worked really great, but it did work. It was a lot of setup. It was really complicated. It was really cool, and it fell apart like playing Jenga one day, and I couldn't get on the air, and I had to go drive. The network fell apart. I didn't know what was going on. So I think this is a lot simpler. This remote PC will probably be your biggest hurdle if this is all foreign to you. So let's just zoom in on this a bit, which I think is Control Plus. And I can slide the page up and down. And so on this, we're going to make sure it reboots all the time if the power goes off. We're going to put something like, and there's probably 15 or 20 good remote desktop programs. We all know about TeamViewer. TeamViewer can be a bit of a pain in the butt if they determine you're a commercial entity. And one of the ways that happens is if you happen to connect to it from work, or your computer's already on a domain or something like that. So I switched all my stuff to AnyDesk. I'm pretty happy with that. I can buy into that, but all I have to keep track of is the 9-digit number that's associated with that. You can automatically make it start. There's Chrome Remote Desktop. There's VNC if you want to open some ports. I think VNC also works without any port opening. Just a whole bunch of different solutions. There's a dozen really good remote desktop programs. What's a remote desktop program? It means I can see that, or I can connect to that computer while I'm away from my house, remote station, shed, wherever your stuff is. And by having that in there, so when we connect to that with another computer, like over here, which is what I do all day long with mine, this user PC or your Mac or whatever. And by the way, you can have a Mac and still connect to a Windows box, so that's really handy. Or you know what, you could probably even have a work laptop and still connect over here and get on the air, but I didn't say that out loud. So that's probably the hardest setup if you've never done it. Man, there's so many of us that have done it. We can do it in our sleep. Happy to help you with what you need to do. There's probably one thing you need to check is just to make sure that it turns on when the power is on. So it's always on, or if you get a power bump, it restarts. And that's usually done in the BIOS. And that's one of those things you have to do when the computer turns on. Hit the delete key or the F1 or F11 key, and you go into a menu you've never seen before. But it's well documented in your particular computer. Every computer is different. Some of the newer ones, you don't even have to get into it at that level. So this is all on a LAN. So you've got a switch, which is a network switch, the octopus that controls the LAN, and it's plugged into the internet. So I think that part you know how to do. This may be your house when you're away in the winter. And we don't want anything on Wi-Fi. Trust me, we just more reliable not being on Wi-Fi. So we'll come back to the part at the bottom here in a minute because I think that's very critical. But once you what did I click here? Once you do that, we can now be on the right side of this vertical line, and we can connect to the radio using SmartLink. With a cellular device, we can have a Maestro or any one of the clients, right? You guys all know what clients are. And let's zoom out a bit. So you can have any of these now connect to your radio. Perfect, we're on the air. We're not going to go into antenna switching and everything else at the moment, but I'll talk about that near the end. And if I forget, please remind me. So that takes care of all this side. We can use our Mac, we can use our PC, we can use our iPhone, our iPad, or our Maestro, and boom, we can connect to the radio, we can get on the air. So in all these clients here, I'm just going to talk about running voice or maybe even CW. CW with the built-in CW keyboard. If you have a key, you can plug it right into a Maestro. There are other creative ways to use a key using a WinKey or remote and stuff. There are people who have done some great solutions. You can plug a key into the Mac version. I've tried it. It works, but it doesn't work well. And I talk about that in other presentations. You really still have to have a WinKey in the middle to handle the translation from keyboard, key paddle strokes to ASCII to over to the radio. And that's because the network between you and I, or the radio and you, leads and lags. And this is why it's just not that simple to do. So that gets that part done. We can plug a microphone and a headset into any one of these devices and be chatting on the air. I'll come to digital in a minute. What about push to talk? Well, you can actually hook up a foot switch into a PC. There's a couple of different ways. You can, and they're described in our community about how to do it. The best documented way probably is using FrStack. Hi, Kyle. And FrStack's a tool which I can bring up that has an ability to map a key through a USB/RS-232 port. If you use the flex control knob, my flex control knob here, in which, I have aux3 mapped to MOX, which will take the radio in and out of transmit. And if I want, so I can just sit there and tap in and out of transmit. Another feature about FrStack has keyboard mapping. So on my keyboard, I have a control spacebar set up that on no matter what screen I'm in, I could be reading the news and chatting on 80 meters. I can go control spacebar, the radio will go into transmit, yak, 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 control spacebar, I come out of transmit. That's the power of FrStack. The Mac has the ability to hardwire a key through. It's in the remote Smart SDR for Mac. So you can look that up. Marcus has that documented and how to do it. And you may need to break out a soldering iron or coerce one of your buddies to break out a soldering to make that work. Or you can even wire it up. There's there's DB9 connectors, those little computer connectors with terminal strips on the back. And you can just don't need a soldering iron, you just need a little screwdriver. That's all well documented in the Smart SDR for Mac. So we've got the audio handled, we've got the mic handled, and we've got push to talk. One thing on Smart SDR for PC, the audio we get has to be the default audio device in Windows. So that if you're using that microphone like this for Zoom, you've probably already set that up as well. And Paul's starting to catch on of all the features of FrStack, man. There's a whole pack of them. We can use a Stream Deck to give you a lot of hot buttons type of thing. So we've got that pretty much done. Now, here's the one thing I do differently, and why I don't install my digital programs on the operator PCs. And I chose to do this because when I first started remote operating, I had very limited upstream, very limited amount of data I could send outbound from the radio. And if you buy internet, it comes in two parts, download, upload. It's like 10 down, 1 up, 25 down, 5 up. And if anybody brags to me they've got a gigabit symmetrical, you can go away now. Because I can't get that anywhere in Canada. I bet you Kyle's got a gig symmetrical, which is 1 down, 1 gig down, 1 gig up, and etc. And Steve, I see your comment about network connections dropping several times a day. Either work with your ISP or try a different router. I had that problem here in Toronto with Rogers. I literally nagged them every day. Every time I had a problem, I record it, and they ultimately fixed it. It was not in my house. They had this thing called a neighborhood problem, and they had a bad, what did they call it? A concentrator or something like that. Kyle, go away. You can leave now, Kyle. Bye. And I knew he was going to do that. And they ultimately fixed it, and now it's been flawless. You need about 1.5 meg upstream for one slice. You can dial that down to about 300 kilobits. I survived for literally 6 or 7 years on 1 meg up by limiting my waterfall and pan adapter. So, and you do that either on the Maestro or in Smart SDR, and I think you can also do it in the Mac. I haven't used the Mac software enough to remember where it is. So that's another key point. Dan talks a lot on LAN stuff in the QSO Today Expo as well on some LAN things that are really important. It's easy to get your computer LAN, your Ham Shack LAN working. It's going to take you some work, some investment.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Thank you, Siri. I'm having problems hearing you too. It's going to take you some work to maybe fine tune it a little bit. They design these to work in most situations, but you can always get more out of it. So that's incredibly important as well. So in my digital world, what I do now is I run Smart SDR for CAT on this computer. I run, we'll zoom in again, and that's, if you ever want to know that on Chrome, it's Control Plus. And you see how well it works? That's funny. We'll escape out of that. And we obviously zoom to some weird level. Let's go back to here. Let's not go back to there. Reload the page. Sorry about that. So we go back to this screen here, and I run Smart SDR for CAT on this computer. I also run WSJT. I run my logging program if I'm doing a contest, FLDigi, all the digital programs I run on that computer, and I remote desktop to it. I can also, if I have to, run Smart SDR there. That's sometimes good for diagnostics, but I run Smart SDR on the PC I'm using SmartLink to connect through. You can split this stuff up. It all doesn't have to be on one computer. And Kyle's converted. And thanks about the comments about the T-shirt. I think we've got new T-shirts coming, by the way. I run Slice Master there, and any other program I might need to control my station. So maybe I'm running somebody else's amplifier, and they've got a user program, and the KPA 500 is a good example. I can run the KPA 500 software here, the CAT 500 software there, and have full control. Maybe the control switch for an antenna switch, my rotor control using PST rotator. If I run it all here, I don't have to worry about figuring out how to get it back to me on this side of the red, on the right side of the red line. And that's why that's so powerful. And the other reason too is if I want to lend my station to my buddy, all I have to do is just get him to log into a PC and everything's all configured and working. I don't have to send him some notes and say, hey, log into SmartLink, or, well, that part you may have to do, but here's how you get CAT and DAX and everything working. And he's like, no, it's too much trouble, go away. I often lend my stations to some friends and say, just log into my PC. It's all configured and ready to go. And I think that's what makes this critically reliable system. We're only moving the data from over the internet through the green cloud, the data we need. That's the stuff we need to hear and we need to talk to, and some control stuff. And the rest of it, we're keeping it nicely on the high-speed part of the world, on the left side of the red line, you know, where we've got a gigabit connection or even a 100 meg connection, and it just sort of works. And I think this works really well. And then you can start to build things out, you know, and then Dave DeCoons will get at you, and then there'll be a Raspberry Pi and Node-RED and some other whole really cool control panel stuff. But that's the next step. So run a PC, go buy something. It doesn't have to be incredibly powerful. Anything 3 or 5 years old. Turn the firewall off on it because you're already behind a firewall. I know somebody will croak on that, but I've never run a firewall on this PC in 17 years, never had an issue. And turn off the antivirus, same reason. Antivirus is really expensive. It can easily soak up 30 to 40% of processor power, because in an antivirus program, every file that either gets read or written requires the antivirus software to inspect it, and that takes time. So I don't know, Kyle, anything else I missed? But that's the basics of this. It's actually incredibly simple. It looks worse than it is, I'm sure, but you can build this. And in my case, my ham shack is different, is away from where I generally sit at our cottage or summer house. And I know people do the same thing. They've got a shed where all the radios are, and yet they operate, 100, 200 feet away from the radio. And I just log in remotely, even in my house, to this PC, and I'm away. I'm off doing, Q65, JT65, MSK scatter. Check Windows Defender. I disable Defender as well, but that's the only antivirus I recommend. I don't use Norton 360 or any of the other ones. Sadly, we have it was a bad joke yesterday in house here, where customer was having something didn't run, and I won't say who it was, but came up and said, I'm pretty sure actually the virus in his computer is Norton 360 because it had its hooks and everything. And that's frustrating if you don't know what's going on. Saw a question on the forum. Can Maestro be run on a hotel Wi-Fi? Yes, sort of, maybe. And I don't have a diagram to show it, but I was a road warrior, and here's how I did it. I had the PC here connected to the hotel Wi-Fi, and most PCs have a NIC card on them, like a physical card. What I would do is run the cable from the Maestro into the laptop, and on the laptop turn on internet connection sharing. And so all the data ran through the PC into the laptop and out to the hotel Wi-Fi. That's part one. Another way that worked for me quite a number of times was I would phone the 800 number in the hotel and say, look, for some reason my device, and I wouldn't tell them what it was, can't get through your paywall. It's MAC address dot 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 dot. It's in the Maestro. You can pull it out. Could you just authorize it? And without fail, they all go, sure, no problem. They want it to work for you. So I hope that helps explain a hotel Wi-Fi issue. But a great question. Any other questions? I won't wait too long because this will live in YouTube for a while. But I'll read them. Yeah, so Mike Lukasik, I hope I pronounced that correct. 300 meg download is fine. The answer is, what's his upload? It's probably more than one and more like 2 or 5. So he's probably just fine. Another good test, by the way, and I test this ahead of time, but if you really want to know how good your internet is, you want to go to dslreports.com and go to speed test. And run this speed test. So I'll actually run it right now, and while we're doing this. And I had a router failure about 3 weeks ago, so I don't know what my buffer bloat's going to be. But if you're in a marginal internet, you're going to want a buffer bloat number in a value of C, B, or A. And buffer bloating is about how your router handles congestion on your router. That's what that flat line is on the top right now. And what it's doing is, while that's maxed out, it's sending other data to it and seeing how it handles that. And the same thing on my upload. This is my home, 250 down. It's supposed to be 25 up. I have a bit of throttling and fine tuning done on a pfSense firewall. And if you wanted to go buy your own router firewall, I'd recommend pfSense. You're going to have to learn a little bit about it, but it's really well done. And look at that, C. So I need to go do some work in that. I can get that to an A, but C is okay. F is a problem, and it really means your internet's a little flaky. What's Paul saying? Yep, Paul, name's Mike, but if you have a mic issue like that, probably best if you open a support ticket, and they'll get you sorted out. So, that's all. And guys, thanks for listening. I hope that helped you a bit and gave you an overview of how I do it. And there's probably 100 other ways to do it, but find one that works for you, one you understand, and one you can diagnose. So I'm hoping this is one that makes it easy enough for you to diagnose. So we'll say 73. Have a great day. And it's finally warm here in Toronto. It's like 18 Celsius outside. 73.